In case you haven't watched the previous videos in this series, go back and check them out. There are some fantastic mysteries in there that I would not want you to miss out on. This is the second part of Tier 1 of the Unsolved Mystery Iceberg, and I won't waste any time telling you that we have a fantastic Discord that you should definitely check out in the description. But without further ado, grab a drink. My choice today is lemon and ginger tea, and join me as we explore the Unsolved Mystery Iceberg. So to start off with, we have the Dancing Plague of 1518. This was a time in 1518 France where hundreds of people were seemingly caught up in a dancing mania for weeks. It started in July when a woman named Frau Trophy started just madly dancing in the street. Soon she was joined by dozens of others, and over the weeks the group just kept growing and nobody knew why. No one stopped. People were collapsing, they were dying of heart attacks. Eventually everyone stopped, thank God, but no one really knows what caused it all. Theories range from a demon possession to stress-induced mass hysteria to one massive hallucinogenic trip. Or maybe they just really wanted to dance. Dark energy. This one is kind of mind-blowing. So if you've seen the previous video, you'll know that the universe is rapidly expanding, which scientists figured is kind of strange, because if the regularly accepted theory of the Big Bang is true, you might expect things to slow down over time after the initial explosion, which the universe did up until about 5 billion years ago. Then it started to speed up. This is where dark energy comes in. I'll try and simplify it, but basically some amount of mass or energy has to be responsible for that acceleration. If we count up all the matter we can possibly observe, it accounts for about 5% of what we need. So dark energy is the label for the unidentified energy that's apparently out there in order for this system to work, but that we can't observe. It makes up roughly 68% of everything in the universe, with the remaining 27% being the next item on our list, dark matter. So although these two are in the same field and they're both called dark, they are called dark for different reasons. This matter is called dark because it does not interact with the electromagnetic field, which means it doesn't reflect or absorb light, and is therefore dark. The evidence from this comes from the fact that observed galaxies would not behave or form the way that they do unless they contained a large amount of mass that we cannot see. It is thought to hardly interact with baryonic or normal matter, but it is thought to make up 85% of all matter in the universe. So between dark matter and dark energy, they are thought to make up 95% of all matter and energy. So most of the stuff that exists, we can't observe it. These two are probably the most complex ones I've done so far, so if you are intrigued by them, definitely check them out as they go insanely deep. The Delphi murders. On February 14th, 2017, the bodies of 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German were found on a trail in Indiana. They were exploring the trail when they failed to meet one of their fathers at the agreed upon time and location. I think when this list was made, the case was completely cold, but there has recently been an arrest made thanks to a photograph and video taken by Liberty just before the attack. The arrested suspect has not been named, but their trial is set for later this year. Hopefully these two girls can receive some sort of justice. Devil monkeys. These are reported sightings of large baboon-like creatures found in wooded areas in Arizona. They are 4 to 5 feet tall, very agile, with almost kangaroo-like legs. Pretty freaky. Edgar Allan Poe was a famous writer and poet that some of you may have heard of. He is considered to be the inventor of the modern detective genre and was one of the first writers to popularize short stories. His death, however, was maybe fittingly mysterious. He was found in Baltimore in 1849, delirious, lying in the gutter, wearing shabby second-hand clothes that weren't his own. He was barely conscious, unable to move, and he died just 4 days later. He was supposed to make the journey from Richmond to Philadelphia to edit a collection of poems, but something happened in between. He never regained enough clarity to explain what happened, and the name Reynolds, who he was calling out just before he died, has never been linked to anyone or anything. Reasons for his delirium and ultimate death range from murder to a brain tumor to something called cooping, which is a practice that was popular at the time, especially in Baltimore, where gangs would kidnap people, disguise them, force them to drink tons of alcohol, and then force them to vote for a specific candidate in a local election that they wanted to sway. I mean, then they would be let free to wander around in a stupor. Poe was apparently quite sensitive to alcohol, so this might be the most wild, but ultimately most likely explanation. Just a side note, guys, if you are liking this video so far, then do hit the like button, as it does honestly help a ton. We also have a small but super rad Discord channel, so if you'd like, check it out. There is a link in the description. But for now, back to the video. Elisa Lam was a Canadian tourist found dead in a water tank of a hotel in Los Angeles. She had bipolar disorder and depression and was acting a little funny before her death. She was convinced that people were following her, and there is actually video evidence from an elevator around the time of her death showing her trying to hide from someone or something in the hallway. The official theory is that she wasn't taking her meds and in her paranoid state went up to hide in the water tank on the roof, fell in and couldn't get out. But there is a fair amount of evidence to suggest that she was killed intentionally and then covered up. Everywhere at the End of Time's final 5 minutes sample. Everywhere at the End of Time is a 6-piece set of music tracks by an artist called The Caretaker, spanning 6.5 hours. The whole thing is pretty eerie, and it's supposed to try and represent the mind of someone and the mental journey that one takes while battling dementia. It's an incredibly eerie but interesting piece of art, but this mystery is regarding the last 5 minutes of the final track in the album. It contains a sample of a choir singing, but nobody, even apparently the caretaker himself, knows the identity of the original sample, who made it, or where it came from. Fairy circles. So these are circular patches of land that are completely devoid of plants or grass in an otherwise planty and grassy area. They occur mainly in South Africa and Australia, and myths tell of gods, fairies, and spirits that create them, with one myth saying that they are formed by a dragon inside the earth. The Fermi Paradox is basically, why aren't aliens? Enrico Fermi was a Nobel Prize winning physicist who argued that since our solar system is quite young compared to the rest of the universe, that should have been enough time in between for other life to develop, and we should see some signs of it somewhere. The amount of progress we've made as humans in the last, say, 1,000 years, and the rapid acceleration of technology means that given just another few million years, we should, in theory, develop something like complete space travel and even domination. So, why hasn't another life form done it? Either they don't exist, they do exist but somehow destroyed themselves, or they have in fact visited Earth many times that we just don't know about. Fifth force. So this is the last complex sciencey one for a bit, I promise. But in physics there are 4 observed forces: gravity, electromagnetism, strong nuclear, and weak nuclear. These 4 form the basis for all known interactions in nature, except for some anomalies and outliers. The 5th force is not the name of a really cool rock band, but a potentially undiscovered force put forward by some physicists that would explain neatly all of the outliers in the existing theories. Also, guys, let me know if you find these sciencey ones boring, or if you think I should stick to just true crime and horror ones. The sciencey ones are super interesting to me, but do let me know if you find them interesting as well. First, Wikipedia edit. Wikipedia, for anyone who's written an essay would know, is basically an online information hub that anyone can edit. But what was the first edit ever made on Wikipedia? There have been a few claims and theories, one being a page called which was just a list of countries starting with the letter U. This is the knowledge we all need. The founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, said that the first edit was him editing the homepage with the text "Hello World." This has been disputed by some people, so we still don't really have a definitive answer. Frank Shaw's Gargoyle. So Frank Shaw was a NASA employee who, on a dark evening in 1986, had an encounter with a terrifying creature. He was heading home one day when perched on top of one of the NASA buildings was a ghastly gargoyle-like figure. It was jet black with a cape or skin draped over its shoulders. It also had 2 huge bat-like wings, and when Shaw heard them open out, he sprinted to his car and locked the door. The creature seemed to have taken flight, but was nowhere to be seen. This is pretty terrifying, and the description matches some other creatures, such as the Mothman and the Owlman. What is NASA hiding? Free will. So this one is a personal favorite of mine. It's simultaneously super obvious and simple, and at the same time super unsolvable and terrifying. So the general idea is you're at a junction, and you can either turn left or right. Most people would say they had the free will to choose either direction, but after making a choice, how do you prove that you could have chosen the other one? We can never go back and rerun the exact same scenario. We will never be able to. Various religious arguments and explanations include stuff like destiny, God's divine plan, or even free will being given to us by God himself. Certain scientific arguments would say that our brains are basically computers, and the choices we make are determined by who we are, ourselves, our neurons, our past, our experiences, and before any decision, those things are basically calculated and one answer is given, the choice that you ultimately end up making. It would argue that we can never choose anything different, even if it seems like we can at the time. I've sometimes compared this to watching a movie. The first time you watch it, it seems like the characters have complete free will. You know, you don't know what's going to happen, so from your perspective, the characters can do anything and go anywhere. But they can't. Their decisions have already been predetermined and recorded. There is no free will for them, but from your perspective, there is. This one gets super deep, and it gets a little existentially terrifying when you really get into it. So, explore it at your own free will. The ghost camels in the American Southwest. So this one kind of blew my mind, but in the 1850s, roughly 70 camels were brought over to America to help explore and expand the Southwest. And when the Civil War broke out, most all of them were either sold at auction or released into the desert. There are some legends such as the Red Ghost, which was a red-haired camel apparently responsible for trampling to death and attacking several people, though it was never found. The main idea, though, is that these captivated camels, after being released, died tragically in the desert, and they never forgave their owners, so they stuck around to haunt and attack any humans who came their way. Ghosts. This one is pretty generic, but it's still a mystery. Are they all hoaxes? Are they dead souls? Spirits? Demons? They seem to be in pretty much every culture that's existed, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Girl from the Maine. This was a tragic case of a 15 or 16-year-old girl found dead in the Maine River in Germany 2001. She had been beaten severely and over a long period of time. She was suspected to be a servant in a diplomatic household, but due to diplomatic immunity, these investigations led nowhere. These types of cases are pretty sad, and this case is still unsolved. Girls see ghost and run. So this is a pretty eerie video caught of these two girls eating lunch. One sees something behind the other and runs off crying. The other one thinks she's joking and starts to laugh until she turns around and screams the most blood-curdling scream that I have ever heard. She then quickly gets up and runs away too. Although no spirits or anything were caught on camera, the girls clearly saw something pretty terrifying. Gloria Ramirez. This one is certainly worthy of a full video later down the line. Nicknamed the Toxic Woman, Gloria Ramirez was admitted to hospital while suffering from cancer. While treating her, several of the hospital workers fainted, with 5 requiring hospitalization and 1 having to remain in the ICU for 2 weeks. It was suggested that she might have been self-administrating dimethyl sulfoxide for the pain, which might have converted to dimethyl sulfate, an extremely poisonous and toxic agent. But nobody really knows for sure, as her body was buried soon after. God. Oh boy. I guess the key question would be, does God exist or doesn't he? Or she? Or it? Which God are we talking about? There are thought to have been over 18,000 gods that humans have worshipped over time. So there are obviously quite a few different opinions out there. This is kind of a strange one, because if you're a believer, then God is probably the most well-known, real thing that there is. But if you're not a believer, it's either a complete myth or it's a mystery. We are many people with many beliefs, and I think that maybe maybe that's a good thing. Green boots. So this one is a little dark. Green boots refers to the green boots of a unidentified hiker who died on the northeast ridge of Mount Everest. He was moved out of the way in 2014, but for almost 20 years, everyone who climbed that path used green boots as a landmark to navigate around while climbing. Sadly, there are over 200 bodies that remain on Mount Everest. It is very difficult and risky and costly to retrieve any of the bodies, as one retrieval would probably cost somewhere around $20,000 and would risk the lives of the entire rescue team. There have been a few cases of people actually going out to retrieve the bodies and dying themselves. So, Mount Everest is no joke. The Green Children of Woolpit. So, this is a legend of two green children who appeared in the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England. This was in the 12th century, and the two kids, found to be brother and sister, seemed perfectly normal except for their green skin. They only ate raw broad beans and spoke in an unknown language. They soon learned to eat other foods and their green color faded. The boy later died and the girl learned to speak English, saying that they had come from a land where the sun never shone and the light was like twilight. Not that one. She said everything was green there and she called it the land of Saint Martin. Now, I don't know about you guys, but Martin kind of sounds like Martian. And what color is the one and only Martian? Just saying, guys. I'm just saying. I think I might be onto something. The Hat Man phenomenon. So, after observing various seemingly healthy people die suddenly in their sleep, in the 80s and 90s, doctors named this condition Sudden Unexpected Nocturnal Death Syndrome. Very cheery. Or SUNDS for short. So, although this syndrome is fairly modern, the legend of an evil force wearing a hat that invades your dreams and eventually kills you in them actually dates back for thousands of years. The modern take on this is, of course, Freddy Krueger, but it is a terrifying thought anyway. Maybe I should get a coffee. Henry Hudson was a famous explorer and navigator in the 17th century. He is known for his explorations of what is today Canada and northeastern America. His explorations were incredibly significant and as such had the Hudson River named after him. During his final expedition, he was the first European to see the Hudson Strait and the immense Hudson Bay. These two obviously also being named after him. The voyage, however, must not have been that great, as after setting shore near the Hudson Bay, most of his crew mutinied and cast him, his son, and 6 others out to sea, never to be seen again. The I70 Killer was an unidentified serial killer who killed 6 store clerks in Midwest America, 1992. The stores his victims worked in were all a few miles off Interstate 70, hence the name I70 Killer. One of the victims was actually supposed to be off that day, but came in to cover a co-worker's shift. The killer would just go into these stores, shoot the clerk, and walk out. There was very little evidence and sightings of him to go off, as these areas were normally quite remote and quiet to begin with. Sadly, no one has been brought forward for the killings to this day. Inside of black holes. Oh boy. If you want your brain to explode, do some research into this one. Basically, black holes aren't holes. They are an insanely dense mass. So dense, in fact, that the gravity they generate is so powerful that nothing can escape from it, even light. So, since the light can't escape, we can't see any of the light that's hitting this thing. Therefore, it appears black. But what it actually looks like, or what it is, we have close to no idea, and it's kind of terrifying. Jabbar Fofi. Giant spiders. So these are these 4-foot spiders, 4 foot in length. They still have 8 feet. Or legs, or whatever. They were first spotted in the 1890s in the Congo, and these elusive spiders have never been captured, but have attacked and killed numerous people. The natives describe the giant spiders as once being quite numerous, but now a vanishing species. I hope they vanish completely. The Jack family. This is the sad disappearance of the Jack family in Canada, 1989. The father of the family, Ronnie, had been out of work for quite some time, and while at the First Liter pub in British Columbia, a man in the pub offered him a job in a logging cabin about 40 kilometers west. Ronnie didn't have access to a car himself, so the man offered to drive him and his family up there that night. So Ronnie went home, the family packed some stuff, and at 1 a.m., all 4 of the Jack family, including 9-year-old Russell and 4-year-old Ryan, piled everything, including themselves, into this guy's truck. They were never seen again, and the man was never identified. No bodies were ever found, and no tips ever came to anything. Jack the Ripper. Again, there are so many of these that could warrant their own video, and this is one of them. But for now, short version. Jack the Ripper was the name given to an unidentified serial killer in Whitechapel, London. The name Jack the Ripper originating from a letter sent into the police claiming to be the killer, though this was never proven and was thought likely to be a hoax. In the autumn of 1888, he killed between 4 and at least 8 women, all of whom were sex workers. There are some really cool theories regarding this case, but I will leave them for the deeper dive. Jim Gray. So this was a famous computer scientist that went missing in 2007. He was an experienced sailor and was on a solo trip to scatter his mother's ashes at the Farallon Islands near San Francisco. The weather and forecast were completely clear for that day, and no distress signal was received or sent out. But Jim never returned from the trip. A 4-day-long search was performed, but Jim and his boat were never found. This one is especially tragic when you consider the reason that he was out there in the first place. There are some people that believe that because Gray worked with computers and databases, even winning the Turing Award in 1998 for his work, thought that perhaps he discovered something that powerful people didn't want him to know, and so they lost him at sea. Jody Who. This was an American news anchor for KIMT that went missing in 1995. She was supposed to be in work at 4 a.m., and when her colleague called her, she said that she had overslept and was running late. This is the last anyone ever saw or heard of her. There was evidence of a struggle outside of her apartment, and witnesses had heard screams at around the time she would have been leaving for work. Although there were a few leads, none have really worked out, and Jody has never been found. Johnny Gosch. In the early morning of September 5th, 1982, while on his paper route, 12-year-old Johnny Gosch went missing. His missing case was one of the first to be printed on milk cartons when they started in the 1980s. But despite all search efforts, Johnny has never been found. His mum, Noreen Gosch, said that 15 years later, a now 27-year-old Johnny turned up on her doorstep. This was apparently at 2 a.m. and he was with an unidentified man. He said that he was kidnapped and he was abused at first, but was later let free and was now living under a different name. Apparently they talked for a while and then he left. Whether he was a prankster or the grief-struck Noreen imagined it all, or whether it was completely true, no one really knows, as the only evidence for it is Noreen's own word. Joseph Merrick, or more famously known as the Elephant Man. This was a tragic and sad story. Due to his deformities, he struggled to find work his whole life, and he had a terrible family life, being repeatedly beaten by his dad. He eventually joined a freak show, which is quite common at the time, under the name the Elephant Man. He later died at the age of 27 in the Royal London Hospital. It's still unclear what caused his deformities, and studies on his skeleton and body parts trying to figure it out have been inconclusive. The Jumping Frenchman of Maine. This is actually an extremely rare disorder of unknown origin that causes the person to be startled to an exaggerated degree. First described by George Miller Beard in 1878, he recorded that when these specific individuals were suddenly given orders, they would get startled and immediately follow the orders, no matter what they were. These ranged from punching to yelling to jumping. One theory is that it was a genetic condition, with a lot of the cases occurring in northern Maine within just a few families. Kaz 2. This was dubbed the Ghost Yacht and was a 10-meter yacht that was found 90 miles off the coast of Australia. The fate of the 3 men that were aboard is still unknown. They were never found, and the event is kind of strange. After finding and boarding the boat, the maritime authorities noticed that something was odd, and that was that nothing was odd. Aside from the men being missing, everything else was normal. Everything was in a reasonable condition. Food and cutlery were still set out on the table. A laptop was still set up and turned on, and the engine was running. There were also a few life jackets still on board, and the emergency systems like the radio and GPS were working perfectly fine. The bodies were never found, and to this day, nobody knows what happened on that boat. Kenny Veach. This was a hiker who loved hiking in the Mojave Desert. He had been hiking for more than 20 years, finding odd ghost towns, caves, and mine shafts. One time, he found a hidden cave whose entrance was perfectly shaped like a capital M. He tried to enter the cave, but the closer he got to it, the more and more his entire body began to vibrate. This scared him, and he left. After posting this experience on YouTube, however, various people encouraged him to go back and to get footage of this cave, which he went out to do, and he was never seen again. Some people think it was an accident, which isn't super likely, as he seemed to be a very experienced and sensible hiker, or that he had found the M cave, which was either of demonic or extraterrestrial origin, or was a secret entrance to Area 51, and he was killed after returning to it. Another theory, actually suggested by his girlfriend, is that he committed suicide. He apparently battled with depression, and after finding his phone just a short walk from his car, she said he likely left it there as to not be tracked and made his final journey into the desert. There's very little evidence either way, but bad mental health affects a lot of people out there. So if you suffer from it, remember to try and talk to someone, and remember that there's always light at the end of the tunnel, even if you can't see it right now. Knowledge. This is one of those existential mysteries, I guess, like free will and consciousness, where as much as we know about it, we know very little. We know that we can gain and lose knowledge somehow, but we don't know how exactly. Living short-faced bears. This was a prehistoric bear that lived over 11,000 years ago. It is one of the largest known terrestrial mammalian carnivores, that's very specific, that has ever existed. Although it's generally thought to be extinct, some zoologists have theorized that it might still exist in Russia and North America. There is a Native American myth of the stiff-legged bear monster, and various sightings in North America and Russia that might lead to this being true. The Long Island serial killer. This was a serial killer who killed between 10 and 18 people over 26 years, disposing of their bodies on the southern shore of Long Island, New York. Most of the victims were sex workers, and although there were a few suspects named, like most of the cases on here, sadly it remains unsolved. The Luna Park Ghost Train Demon. This was a tragic fire that engulfed a ride in Luna Park called the Ghost Train. Sadly, it killed 7 people, but later on, the mother of one of the victims was looking through photographs of that day. She noticed her son posing next to a figure in an apparent demon outfit. And since this person has never been identified, was this a worshipper of demons who orchestrated the fire as some sort of human sacrifice? Was it started by actual demons? Or was it, as some people say, simply an accident? Or an insurance scam gone wrong? We don't know. Man of the Hole. This was a man who, after his tribe suffered a genocide at the hands of Brazilian settlers in the 1970s, was the last remaining member of his people. He remained isolated in a protected area, moved frequently, and would leave these deep holes in all of the temporary camps that he started, which gave him the name Man of the Hole. Nobody knows what these holes were for or why he made them, and nobody knew what language he and his people even spoke. He remained isolated in this protected area of the Amazon rainforest until his death in 2022. Mantis Man. This is a roughly 7-foot tall bug-like creature seen in Hackettsville, New Jersey. It has apparently fled whenever it's been approached, and apparently resembles a praying mantis, hence the name. The Martin family. This was a family of 5 that went missing in Oregon 1958 after making a day trip to get greenery for Christmas decorations. Months later, the bodies of Susan and Virginia were found, 2 of the daughters aged 13 and 11, on the shores of the Columbian River. The rest of the family and the family vehicle that they were apparently all in has never been found. There were actually tire tracks and paint found that matched the family vehicle's make and model, leading off a cliff into the river. So with the only bodies found being downriver, it's suspected that they might have accidentally gone off the edge or have been forced off by someone or something. Despite further extensive searching on the river, the car and the rest of the bodies have never been found. Mess O Blues. So this one's a little lighter than some of the previous mysteries. This was a partial prototype short of a precursor to the Johnny Bravo cartoon series. Van Partiple, for his senior thesis project in animation, decided to create a story and cartoon which he titled Mess O Blues. The story started off as 3 Elvis impersonators fighting crime. Then he reduced it to just 1 impersonator, and Partible's professor actually showed it to a friend working at Hanna-Barbera's productions, and he liked it so much that he asked if he could base a new TV show off of it. The The name, hair color, and a few other things were changed, one of which was making him only talk like Elvis and instead look a little more like a James Dean sort of character. There is some minor footage available of the original concept, but the only VHS and digital copy of the original are owned by Partible, and he said, sadly, that he has no plans to release it. Minecraft Lost Versions. So over the years, Minecraft has obviously gone through hundreds of versions and updates. This mystery refers to all of the versions that have not yet been recovered. A lot of them were quite early on in the alpha stage of the game, but there are a lot of possibly unique versions still out there that are currently not archived. You can actually find a list of all the ones that are missing. So if you have an old version of Minecraft on a dusty laptop that you haven't used in 10 years, give it a boot up and see if you have any of the missing versions on there. And if you do, you might just be the next hero in the Minecraft community. So this was a super long one, guys. There was lots of stuff covered and lots of mysteries explored. And honestly, thank you so much for the support that you've shown so far. But we are not done yet. The last part of this tier will be up here on YouTube very soon, or now if you're watching this later than like a week. Check out the Discord in the description and remember to hit the like button and stay tuned as we finish our journey of the first tier of the unexplained mystery Iceberg. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.